Okay, so now we come to the final step in the virtual installation, which is the sensor installation. So let's preview that. And we're going to take our spacer bar and we're going to take the pin out of the end and screw it into the reference. It doesn't really matter which one of these frames that we use, but we have to pick one. Now we grab the other frame, and if you remember from the previous video, our spacing was 30 for this example, and conveniently enough that bar stopped at 30. Now we can go ahead and grab the whole apparatus, and we could mount these with bands. Now I'll say something here. We should condition the pipe really before we do this step. So we need to have a smooth surface. I mean, if it's freshly painted pipe and it's not old and flaking, then we can just go ahead and put it on here. But even then, it would be a good idea to just hit it with some sandpaper and use a rag to clean it off. If you've got a thick epoxy covering this, sometimes, especially for like a gas application, it would be good to go ahead and remove this that epoxy layer, because it could really impede the signal. Now, the other thing is, if this is ductile iron, you're going to have this orange peel type of a surface to it, and then I would even recommend using a grinder. Now, I know many of the field people prefer to use reflect mount even on ductile iron because it's kind of easier to install, but I prefer the direct mount where one sensor gets mounted here and the other one gets mounted on the opposite side, because with ductile iron it's kind of nasty and it impedes the signal quite a bit. So shooting across once rather than bouncing off the far end will give you a stronger signal. So now I'm going to click on this, and it's showing you the different mounting locations. If you're doing a two path, you might want to put one path at the I guess this would be the 10 o'clock position, and then the other path would go on the 2 o'clock position. If it's a single path, you could choose either side. It's also okay to go on the horizontal. And in fact, when we're doing a reflect X two path, then we prefer to go on, or we have no choice but to really go on the horizontal. Well, not necessarily. You can also go this way, but we'll talk about that at another time. Now I want to tighten down the straps. Now the way they show this strap tightening here, I prefer to move this worm screw onto the surface of the pipe. I don't like it to have it hanging in midair, because when I do, this strap will tend to torque and bend and I'll never really get it tight. So always position this on a part of the pipe where it's snug against the pipe. You don't want it in midair like this. So let's tighten it down. It's kind of hard to tell, but I guess it's sort of on the surface of the pipe right here. So we'll tighten that down and do the same thing for the other one. Incidentally, if this was a two-path, you could have the band capture not only this path on one side of the pipe, but the opposite side of the pipe. You could capture the other two frames with the same two straps. So we'll tighten this down and click on this. Okay, this reiterates something I said in a previous video. If this is a liquid application, we would like 10 diameters from the nearest upstream obstruction or change in the piping, and 5 downstream. If it's a gas application, you want to double these numbers. Okay, and there's the flow direction. Okay, now we're ready for our sensors. Okay, here's your sensor. You could put some grease. I've never seen a tube of grease that looks like this, but that's besides the point. You just need a thin bead down the middle, and these slide into the frames. This video only deals with the frames. I would assume there's going to be another one for the precision mounts, which are stainless. You want to make sure you're up against this pin here. They're calling it the cross brace. And make sure it's flush up against that, and visually check that. And this step, I always like to get this lock nut out of the way first, so I usually bring the lock nut all the way up, because it could fool me into thinking that I'm tight if it's down too far. And then I would like to tighten this down once I've got this nice and snug, but always bring this lock nut up first before tightening the screw. Here's our cables. You can put some dielectric in here. It helps. If the meter didn't come with the dielectric, then you could use the same grease that you use to put the sensors on, and that's the super lube usually. Tighten that down, and then I guess you could put the gland on. Sometimes I even put the dielectric on the gland, because I have had situations where I have cross-threaded. Okay, grab my other sensor. Now I'll say this: if you have a bunch of sensors all staged to get put on pipes, make sure your serial numbers are matching between the up and down. I've all too often seen people kind of line up the transducers, and then they just grab any pair, thinking that that'll be good enough, but they should be matched by serial number. Okay. You want to put the grease on here again. Just a thin bead. Goes back on. Make sure you're up against the stop. Visually check that. Back out this lock nut first. Tighten it down. And now you could tighten down the lock nut in place. Put your dielectric. Screw it on. Put some dielectric on the glands. Screw those down. And I believe, let's see what we got here. Let me click on this. Okay, so this is your path 1. I believe this is up, this is down, and this is your path 2, up and down. So let's take out these plugs. Oh yeah, here it is. A is up, B is down, path 1, and the same thing for path 2. Okay, I will say this. you're going to have to use this tool to screw these down. I've taken to carrying with me a bunch of slip-ons that I thread into the F connector, and then I push it up into the F connector female end, and then when I tighten down my gland, it locks it in place. This is especially good for troubleshooting, and later on if I have to quickly pull it out and swap them to try different things. So I highly recommend that you grab a hold of some of these. You can get them on Amazon or anywhere, but they're you thread them into here, and they're slip-on connectors, and they're straight. And what do they want me to do here? Oh, they want me to grab this tool that I was talking to you about. Okay. And it's meant to tighten this down. So you can avoid that step if you get the slip-ons. Okay. Now, be very careful here. I've seen too many instances where people have cross-threaded this. So always do like a counterclockwise thread first to make sure you've lined up correctly into the threads, and then tighten this down. Do the same thing with the other side. Get that snug in there. Put that back because you're going to lose it. Tighten this one down. Okay. And I think we're going to stop here because I think we're going to start programming again. And we'll pick that up on the next video.